Westerbeck. He's an architect and a North Shore citizen, born and raised here in the North Shore area. And our founding member is Amanda Dodd Olson, also a North Shore born and raised person. So anyway, let's get started. Can you please explain to us exactly what your roles are? Cary, let's start with you.
Sure, I guess a little bit of origin story might not hurt. I moved from the city of Kenmore, where I lived with my family for 11 years, over to Bothell here, because we bought property we were going to develop, and we're sitting one of those project now. But I was interested in building community here in Bothell. And one thing I did a few years ago when we heard Country Village is going to close, I thought, where are all these people going to go? So I traveled a bit and seen market halls all over the country and all over the world. So I started a page called Friends of Bothell Market Hall. The idea that we would get a market hall someday, or start to get a coalition of people who would create a market hall, which could be a place for what I call the Country Village refugees, when they didn't have an inexpensive place to set up shop. Because these places often have inexpensive rent, you can rent a little space and be in community with other shopkeepers and share a bathroom and share space and so forth, and you can incubate businesses. So we kind of did that as a response to Country Village going out of business or being sold. And later on I realized there were some challenges, I thought, in our land use code, and some things that we could be doing better as a city that would maybe benefit from a small group that would advocate for those things with the city. So I reached out to the community on the Bothell community page and started asking people for, well, actually I should say, maybe we should stop, but I can back up because I know this is going on and on, but you can edit it out if you want. In 2017, I did a message on Facebook to both the Market Hall page and the Bothell community page about how I was excited about the growth in downtown. There were a lot of people complaining about it, didn't like the change, didn't like the growth, they wanted old Bothell. And I said, well, I'm pretty excited about it, and I think there's a lot of potential, and it's going to be really good for Bothell, and there's a lot of opportunity for us here to grow ourselves into a destination. And so I said, if you agree with me, message me, and maybe we'll start a little group. So it took me a minute to get there, but that was the genesis of BOPOP, the Country Village thing, the Market Hall, and then trying to find find my people. So I wanted to find people who are interested in furthering good urbanism, good growth, people-oriented, compact, transit-friendly, pedestrian-friendly growth. It's also good for cities, because cities make more tax that way. And so I finally decided, I reached out to that same list of people who messaged me back in 2017 and said, okay, we're finally going to do it. We're going to start a group. I don't think I had a name at that point, but we started meeting. I did create a name before we met, but we started meeting just about a year ago right now, early January 2019. And so that was the genesis of the group. And I'm not sure if that was your original question, but I feel like that's important to establish.
I think that's very important to establish. Thank you. And Amanda, how did you end up involved in this group?
So I remember Cary's postings because I was pretty bummed about Country Village closing. I had grown up going there. I was taking my son there. But I remember we talked about a market hall, and I think sort of the evolution was that we realized that a place like Country Village or a place like Main Street really can't be built under our current land use codes.
Right.
There's so much parking required per building, per institution, that it gets to where it's unmanageable. It's hard to develop like a small project and let growth happen incrementally. So we really sort of had to change our focus from building a place like that to just making it so we could build a place like that. And I knew Cary and a couple other BOPOP members from being on our local giant Facebook group for Bothell community as one of the few people saying, I like the growth in Bothell, versus sort of a loud, I hope, minority of people who don't like the growth in Bothell. Having grown up here, I sort of remember it both ways, and I think we're in a much better place now. So I was like, I want to get involved with that. So I did.
And we acknowledge there's some growing pains, I get that, but
yeah, there definitely
the
growth
trust
is
of things.
Yeah, I think the big thing to understand Because I do appreciate the nostalgia. I remember when you could go to the grocery store and not be surrounded by so many people. But I think the thing is, Bothell, the growth was unsustainable. Like if you just add houses, your city's not going to be financially solvent, and that's really important to me. Like I've purchased a home here. I'm growing my family here. I want it to be solvent so that my kid can grow up here. We want the city to be vibrant in 10 years.
And still be able to walk around
Yes.
in the city.
And ideally build it in such a way that you can get to most things without always having to hop in your car.
Yeah, and I mean
useful services.
that would be awesome.
One of the points that you brought up when we were talking earlier about Bopop was you said people first, not cars first. Can you
Right.
expand on that?
Oh,
a
I'd
little
love to,
bit
yeah.
for us? Because I think that's a big part
It is a big part.
of what people aren't thinking about when they say they don't want Bothell to change, because I think that's what they're talking about. They want to hold on to
Yeah.
being able to walk around in their downtown.
Ironically, we want to give people more of what they probably love about Bothell. We want to build more, essentially, of what you have on Main Street. And because we have to put these big parking lots between all the buildings now, we can't really build another Main Street. Building our Main Street as it is today is really illegal in our land use codes, our zoning codes. So that's really important to know. So, sorry, I already forgot your question. I want to address it because there's a lot behind it.
People oriented.
People-oriented places. People first, yeah. So prior to World War II, for the last 3,000 years, and I'm not kidding, so going back to the Egyptians, 5,000 years, we always built places for human scale. The primary way we transported ourselves around was by our feet, or a wheelchair, whatever, but we didn't get in cars. And I love cars, don't get me wrong, they're fantastic convenience. But, and everything we built, our towns, our main streets, even the villages we lived in and so forth, was oriented to people going to the optometrist and the grocery store and the doctor and the school and everything else and work. More or less being able to walk, because cities got a little bigger, they got some trains and transit and stuff like that. But we didn't all have to buy a car to get everywhere. We weren't isolated. In the 20th century, we started this Suburban Experiment, which some call it, Suburban Experiment, where we made everything large distances apart. We had to get in a car to go do anything. And we all grew up with that as a standard, that you would get in your car to go do anything. Doctors, grocery store, school, you name it. School, we often went on a bus, so it's another vehicle. And the idea is when we hate cars, wouldn't it be great if we were freed from having to do everything with our car? And part of what we need to do is just return to a traditional form of development, which is just building things close together. And you're going to still want some parking because people are going to come from other places, or you're going to come and have visitors, whatever. We might put that parking at the edge of a town, so there's plenty of place for people to park, and they walk 2 blocks in, and it's just the park once principle, and then they walk 100 yards and they get to, or wheelchair, whatever, because there's always going to have to be accessibility for people who can't walk. And then, wow, you're 50 or 100 fantastic little shops downtown. And I would say most all of us have great memories of vacations or trips to towns where you could just park and wander around all day and do all kinds of wonderful things. And it wasn't, hey, let's get in the car and go to that place in the middle of a parking lot. And let's get in the car again and go to that place in the middle of a parking lot. And let's go to that one. It was, you just wander around and window shop from one place to another. And that's how we did things for literally thousands of years as human beings. And we got away from that in the 20th century. So we want to go back to being able to build in such a way and have our land use code allow that we can build things to the human scale and not just build them for cars first. And the capper on that is, if you talk to any architect, and I am one, any developer, every single project begins with how many cars you can park, and that determines what you can build. Period. Talk to anybody who designs buildings, architects in general, developers. Every project starts with how many cars can you park, and how are you going to park the cars, and then you figure out what you can build. It seems something a little odd that's how we just determine what we're going to build when we need to build things for ourselves as human beings.
And as a result of that sort of thinking, I think we can all attest to what it's like on a daily basis to get in your car when you have to go somewhere.
Yeah.
How long does it take to get from here to Bellevue anymore?
Yeah, well, and I think the thing for me is it's Saturday, it's errand day, we're gonna go do a bunch of stuff. in and out of the car, in and out of the car. You know, it's tiring. It takes longer to get places because everybody is doing it. You know, if that whole park once and just do more things after you do that, it would save so much time. I think people think that driving everywhere is faster because if you chart out like the bus to every different place, it takes longer. But I would love to just park once, you know, go around, get my groceries, whatever else I need, you know, in one trip and be done. And then, you know, you're not driving to every single little spot.
And I know, Amanda, you commute to work.
I do. I commute to Bellevue.
And what is that like for you on a daily basis?
Oh man, I actually adjusted my work schedule a little bit to be more like 10 to 7 just to get away from some of the traffic. And if I ever have an earlier meeting, it's painful. I take the bus as much as I can. It's just nuts to me. And I think the biggest gap that we see right now is I live in the suburbs in Bothell, and you know, I have to get to a park and ride to take the bus. The local buses are not fast. And I think this is not land use codes, but I think one of the things we really try to encourage with BOPOP is just more transit, better transit. That's something we talk about a lot, and just trying to find a way to connect people in Bothell to public transit. And if I can take public transit the whole way to work, that's one less car in everybody else's way if you have to drive somewhere. I think people don't appreciate the wider scale of public transit. People think, oh, it's gonna take me 15 extra minutes to get to work. But for me, I mean, most days I can afford that. And if everybody sort of thought that way, then someone who's really in a rush, someone who's taking their kid to the doctor, someone who's just got to drive for whatever reason, you know, they have a much better trip there. You know, we kind of have to
cleared the roads for them.
Yeah, I really like solutions that kind of make us step back and think like we need to work together somewhat. Like if you don't have to drive, whether that's because we have better people-oriented places or because we've got systems in place that I can get to Bellevue without driving at all, you know, that clears the way for people who really need to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, subcontractors, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, they're always going to have to drive. Or some get their equipment and their tools places. So the more of those of us who really don't have to drive everywhere could find alternate ways, the more we clear up the streets for them to do what they absolutely have to do for us to run our lives. We've all experienced the late plumber or the electrician that the traffic was horrible. I came from West Seattle and it took 90 minutes, you know. Wouldn't it be great if, you know, we were doing what we could to get those roads a little more clear, and we actually maybe we saved money and we pollute less, and we were closer to work. That's a tangent to that, which is council member I voted for, I was hoping would win. Mason Thompson talked a lot about, within this BOPOP group, about as we grow Bothell, we would like to more and more make it so people don't have to get in their car. So in other words, for people who, for example, work up at biotech in Canyon Park, the city's looking at how we can make that mixed use. Well, that's really important. If we start to make shops and restaurants and apartments up there where people can live a good chunk of their life without having to jump in the car, and they can go ride their electric bike a quarter mile to their office instead of having to drive all the way to Linwood, for example, where a lot of people are living who work in Bothell. We've made a huge change there. We got one car off the road. Someone gets to live better. They get to save money, save stress. They start to live in what we call a complete community, which is all the things you need more or less per week are nearby you.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you also brought up when we were talking earlier in terms of growth for the city and support for the city and the small businesses within the city,
Yep.
is when we live like that, people are spending their dollars within the city. They're supporting the small businesses, and the taxes are supporting
That's right.
city services.
And even better on top of that, as Amanda brought up earlier, people who study this have found, and there's a whole firm that's just set up to do this. One's called Urban 3, run by a guy named Joe Minicozy. He goes and consults all over the country for cities, and he does this really groundbreaking work about, he looks at where the cities themselves make the most tax money on various kinds of tax. And he does these little charts where he does a bunch of research and charts it on a special kind of software. And it's always sometimes even poor neighborhoods, but any place where there's compact development, the kind we see on old main streets and prior to World War II, the stuff that's close together, they are powerhouses. And like Amanda said, profit per acre, I can't remember how it's.
Was it like pipe per person or something? Was
Well,
one of
that
it?
too. That's a tangent
Yeah, that's
too.
a different. It's kind of like the
Those are
residential
related.
version.
We'll get to that, but any place where you have compact development, businesses side by side, generally it could be walked to, the old traditional style development without a lot of parking connected to it. Those places have a huge, they bring in a ton of money per acre for the city. So any place the city commits to that, they actually get way more tax money, by like 10 or 20 times as much than they would from a Walmart or a Best Buy or something else. People think, oh, we're going to bring in the Walmart or Best Buy or Home Depot. Those are mostly parking lots. So the dollar per acre that the city earns from those is actually really, really low. And yet they commit huge amounts of space to it, and it causes us all to drive cars there. And you can.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah, please. So
I was
sorry
gonna
about
say,
that.
because I think that I've fallen in that sort of thinking trap before, because you think, oh, this business is going to bring in like this much, sales tax. But you have to look at how the land is being used. If it's 2 acres and half or 2/3 of it is parking lot, that one business is bringing in a lot, but there's just dead space, and your city is losing money, where if it had like a dense district or dense housing, it would be gaining more. I think people focus too much on individual businesses versus how land is being used, because you can't build more land, right? That's all we have, so we really have to make sure it's being used smartly. Sorry.
No, you said it better than me. And so essentially, the more we get use out of each square foot or square acre or whatever per piece of land, the more we supercharge that, and it comes back to us as citizens and cities. So cities, actually, the best thing we could do is encourage compact, dense development, and that comes in a lot of different forms. And the city will actually make more money off of it, and we're always broke, right? So if the city did that, was willing to change things to more mixed-use development and build more of these traditional neighborhoods that people love, they can walk around the corner to the pizza shop and stuff. We love it, and the city makes more money. It's a win-win.
So 2 questions on that. Number
Sure.
1, I know in Bothell we have a lot of people who are like, save the North Creek forest,
Sure.
save the different forests. Doing this kind of development would in fact
Yes.
save these protected areas that we cherish so much.
It's another win-win. There's really no downside, because our idea is we really don't need to build any more roads, pipes, wires, which we'll get to, like Amanda said. We can really just keep infilling on stuff we've already spent money on. We don't need to build new stuff. We can just infill. We've got so much space we haven't used well. And so, sorry, I keep losing track. It's something about the phone there.
Well, I've thought about this because I live near the Shelton View Forest.
Yeah.
I've been there with my son. It's
Yeah.
great. The stewardship organization just does fantastic work, great outreach. But what it comes down to really is, how are we going to pay to buy it and maintain it, right?
Mhm.
I think the trick is, I think we all want to save it. I think it has to pencil out. And that's the battle that the city council has, is, it's such a push-pull of obligations, because they want the city to use their money smartly. And if we sink so much money into a natural space, it has to come from somewhere else. So if we really densify, if we make sure that there are very productive centers of the city, and I think we have a lot of opportunity for that in Bothell with downtown, North Creek, Canyon Park, Thrasher's Corner. If we can get those to be dense, financially productive uses of land, we can afford to save places like the Shelton View Forest. We can afford things like maintaining the Wayne property,
Golf
which
Course.
has, I think, 16 acres that can't be developed, but need to be maintained, and there's a lot of conservation efforts that have to be paid for. I think volunteer work parties are amazing, but they can only get so far. So we kind of have to shape the rest of our city to help pay for those spaces that are so important, just sustainability wise and just conservation wise, but that are hard to prioritize financially when you have people crunching the numbers. Our city can't go broke over Shelton View Forest, even though really, because the environment is so important, it should be such a huge priority. So in my mind, it's such a good way, just making sure that the rest of the town is productive is just one of the only ways we can really afford that, unless someone mysteriously with billions of dollars would like to come buy it.
So utilizing the land appropriately
Right.
would help to save these other pieces of land.
Getting the most out of it.
Yeah.
And getting the most out of it.
And that was where I lost the train of thought, which was the good irony, you might say, is that if we use existing places more productively, it allows us to focus on saving wonderful chunks of the city, like Shelton View, like Wayne. It actually, I can use this word again, supercharges our efforts to do that. So we can say, yes, it's really important we save these green spaces, and we can afford to save them because we have the space. They don't need to be set aside for houses. Let's set them aside for fantastic green spaces, because we're going to concentrate our development where we already have pipes, wires, roads, and established places. And in fact, those places we're going to develop, like you said, they're going to pay for these things because they're going to be more productive for us by putting more things on them. And by that we mean, when she mentioned pipes earlier, there's another thing that these people do who study productivity per place, and say if you have five houses on a road a mile long, that's a lot that each house owes in tax and maintenance money for each foot of pipe, sidewalk, curb, wire, whatever. Whereas compact development, you might have on one block, 200 feet long, you might have 5 houses. So each house is responsible for a much smaller slice of their pie to maintain those utilities. So that really makes a huge difference, because a lot what people who study this have found across America is a lot of the reason American cities are always bankrupt or short on cash is we spread ourselves out so thinly, and we build a lot of expensive infrastructure we can't maintain.
Well, and sorry.
Well,
That's
I
all.
have a question on
Go
that.
ahead.
Do you want to finish that thought,
Okay.
though?
I think and this is pivoting a little bit, but I think the important thing to remember too is if we just build one type of home, a big lot, big house, a big lot, or big house on a lot, that takes up the whole thing, we're limiting the people who can live here. For diversity and economic sustainability, we need different types of housing stock. Dense housing allows people who can't afford a giant house in the suburbs to still live in Bothell, to still work in Bothell. To part of creating, to me, I think of both people oriented is important. I also think of it as just creating vibrancy. Part of creating a vibrant community is just ensuring that different kinds of people can live here. I had to get an apartment in Linwood when I was first moving out because there was just nothing affordable near where my parents lived in Bothell. And I've been lucky enough to be able to move back, but I don't want people who grew up here, and a lot of people that I went to high school with have moved far out, have moved to different places, and you have to keep going farther and farther and farther, which takes up so much more of your day. Like if I have a family, and I can't imagine having a 2-hour each way commute, just because I can't afford to live where I'm working. It's doing just bad things to, I think, our communities. So I would love to see us, we densify, we have different types of housing, and that not only makes our city more sustainable because we have not just one type that's expensive to maintain the infrastructure for, but we have more families, more people who can live here and contribute to our community.
Yeah, because a good community has a whole full mix, from homeless, because we know that's a fact of life, all the way up to wealthy and everything in between. And one of the things people will kind of test your community, whether your community is affordable or not. Can you have grandma or grandpa live down the street on fixed income from their kids who might make a normal middle class lifestyle, down the street from the uncle who is, basically living poor, whatever, working poor, and everybody in between. And if you can't have them all in a different kind of housing type within a mile or so, then you probably don't have a very diverse selection of housing. And we don't have that in Bothell.
Now, a question for you on that, and a question on this, the way you would like to see this develop.
Sure.
Property taxes. How does that affect people's property taxes? I'm thinking that it would be beneficial
It is.
for us to develop in this way, because these boosts in sales taxes, these boosts in development of different types of businesses in these mixed use developments would eliminate some of the need for raising property taxes for
Absolutely.
people.
Yeah, which is kind of a broken system, it seems like, here in Washington. To that point, also realize, and this point comes up a lot, the more stuff we put on an acre of land, the more that costs, like everything else. The cost of utilities is spread out, and the cost of the taxes is spread out over a lot more people. So your slice of your apartment in a 50-unit apartment building that's compactly developed, and people like those buildings, they're often a very nice place to live. Their slice of property tax that goes in the rent is tiny compared to someone who lives on an acre and they pay the entire thing themselves. So the more, like anything else, the more we divide it up and the more use you get out of each square foot of land, the lower everybody's costs go. So it's a really good point. And yeah, hopefully we boost the economy by having more stuff on an acre. You're right, all those taxes we tax ourselves for go further.
Well, and I think people I know that I historically haven't had a good grasp of sort of the development cycle, So a developer, especially in a lot of the communities that we have in Bothell, buys a bunch of land, builds a bunch of houses, puts in the infrastructure to begin with, and then 20 to 40, maybe 50 years later, that needs to be replaced, and the city's on the hook for that. And the original impact fees that the developer paid when they built are gone. They were paying for other things. You know, your real estate taxes to be affordable don't cover that, right? That revenue has to come from somewhere. So diversifying how the city gets revenue makes it so that we can afford to live here, because if we actually had to pay for all of the sewer, all of the water, all of the electricity, like infrastructure that our homes need, I mean, I probably couldn't afford my own home. It would be insane.
It's true. You make a really good point, Amanda, because if we do the math, most of us who, I live downtown Bothell now, but I lived in, could be considered suburbia for most of my life. We actually think we pay really high taxes, but we actually aren't even covering the costs of the roads and the streets and the sidewalks and the pipes and the wires. We're always getting behind constantly, because if we actually paid the real price, when people do the math, we're behind. We're not paying nearly what people would never pay. Like you said, they could never pay what. So that means we're always in the hole. So it's like a scandal no one really knows. And one of the reasons that communities would invite growth is some call it a Ponzi scheme. It might be a little extreme, but it's kind of true. So all the new growth is paying for all the stuff they have to maintain from 50 years ago. So we always need that new infusion of cash, which is why everyone doesn't like the city welcoming growth. Well, the city needs growth just to keep us all going.
Well, it's why when the housing market crashed, cities were in trouble, because that money stopped coming in. More people stopped buying into the system. And I misspoke earlier. I didn't acknowledge, I talked about utilities, but there's fire, emergency medical services, education, police services, schools. Some of these things have other types of funding compared to just pipe being laid, but we have to pay for all of it, right? There was a time in history when you had to pay to have fire service at your house, private, we're not there anymore. And so we need to make sure that we just really get those systems in place. We had levies here for safe sidewalks. We always want sidewalks. We always want, the latest and greatest technology keeping us safe out and about. And to do that, our city needs to be able to pay for it. I fully believe it's not sustainable to just have residents pay for it.
So that's what's interesting too is, we're as much about fiscal responsibility as we are about people-oriented places, because one gets the other.
There's a car alarm going.
Yeah, I know. We're downtown, so we get on the daily car alarms. But the interesting thing is, it's not only so an organization we pay a lot of attention to is Strong Towns. Check it out, strongtowns.org. It's really fundamental to the work we do, and it's kind of what spurred me to start BOPOP. In fact, I should have just called it Strong Towns Chapter, but. The whole idea behind BOPOP's more fun. The whole idea behind Strong Towns was started by an engineer and a planner who was kind of disgruntled. He found that most of the work he was doing as a planner and civil engineer was not fiscally sustainable, and so he was saying we want to make strong towns. Strong towns are ones that can pay for their liabilities and don't get in debt constantly. So the whole idea is, if you build more compactly, like we did pre-World War II. If you're only responsible for that 20 feet of pipe and not 200 or not 2 miles, you can actually maintain your facilities within your city without having to tax yourself huge amounts or get into lots of debt. So it's just basically paying your way. Like, we all expect everybody's family to pay their own way, and really we're all subsidized right now by the feds, the state, each other, new development, because of the way we grow in a suburban model is not sustainable. But most people don't know that. If you look at the money, that's what we do.
Well, and it's not something, I don't remember any of this coming up in my civics classes, right? City governments are so unique compared to even just the federal government. We learn about checks and balances. We don't learn about budgeting on that level. So you almost, I think a big part of what we do is reaching out to people and trying to educate, where the problems in our city come from. Because a lot of people like to talk about it and complain about it, but I think what we really try to do is stay focused on solutions. We had a booth at Sustainamania last year, and just talking about why we think the city is having issues and what we could possibly do better in Bothell. People were like, wait, what? And then very interested, because I think it's not a conversation that enough people are having.
Yeah, we rarely look underneath the hood.
Yeah.
So BOPOP is about solutions.
Yep.
And people can find you on Facebook.
Yes.
And it's BO.
B-O-P-O-P.
P-O-P, but there's a hyphen, B-O-P-O-P. Is that correct?
Well, and I think the group is BOPOP, Bothelites for People-Oriented Places. So I think if you search Bothelites, you would definitely find us.
Okay.
And our website is bopop.org, just BOPOP.org, and we link to the Facebook group.
And you link to the Facebook?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yep.
And people can find out more about what you're doing, and can they comment and
Yeah,
Yes.
so it's a public
Get
group.
involved?
You don't even have to join to get involved. We post a lot of strong towns content, a
And
lot
other
of
ones,
a lot of just local stuff, local events. One of the things that we've really adopted, I think, is a love of the new Bothell Friday Market. That's a big, events and things help make a place people oriented. It's not just land use codes and revenue. I think we try to
Building community.
help out with projects that we think build community as well. So we have there's a lot of market content in there too, and just new interesting things in Bothell. So it's a focused offshoot.
I think you have to, that community piece, becoming part of the community, being out in the community, is what's going to help you feel.
And we're very, as members of BOPOP, we're very invested in Bothell, which is, I'm put every last full penny of my self-worth, my worth as a, whatever, my bank account into this building we're sitting in, because I want to be in the community in Bothell, investing, putting my money where my mouth is. It's also a way to make a living, but it's a very, scary and risky way to make a living. But I wanted to build community, but it can be done in so many different ways. Other things you'll find on the Facebook page, we just post a lot of things that make people think differently or think more deeply about how their city's operating.
Yeah,
And all the things we think we take for granted, or we think we know how things operate. I'm like, here, check this out. You might think differently about something after you read this.
I think one of the things that's been great about being involved in BOPOP too is just how many people in our group are out there shaping the community. So I think if we look at our about page, has a picture of some of our members and some bios, and it's not complete. I have been chasing people down to add
We've
bios.
got more to put on there.
I know, but it's like we have the Landmark Preservation Board, we have the chair right here, we have people on the Shorelines Board, Parks and Rec, Planning Commission.
The chair of the Parks Board.
Chair of the Parks Board. I'm not so good at keeping
Library
track.
Board.
Library
Children's
Board,
so
yeah. We have a lot of, we have
the local deacon from
yes.
Bothell United Methodist Church.
Yeah, which is a church that does so much in our community. We have so many people who care about Bothell, who build their lives and even sometimes their livings around just making Bothell a better place. So it's really great to see. It's just great when we all get together and talk too. I think the Facebook group is great, and especially if you want to sit down and read something, we're not going to do that at a meeting, but we just get together and talk, and just the way we can talk about ideas with not only how people are involved in the community, but what people do for a living. Cary's an architect, we have a CPA, we have a deacon, we have I have a tech job, so when we needed a website, I was like, I can do that.
Clutch.
But it's, we have such great conversations because we have so many different areas represented just in our group. So.
And we're transitioning to what do we do with this organization now, and what do we want to change, or we want to affect, and what steps we're going to take to make those changes.
We're coalescing around causes.
Yep.
That is so cool.
Trying.
That is so cool. I am so impressed.
It's been really fun. I think I've talked to some friends. I'm like, oh yeah, I've been doing this sort of community advocacy group, but it's a blast.
It is fun.
I don't think I anticipated that part.
Well, I don't think people think enough about local community, and I think that's where everything begins.
Yeah.
And I think you have to be involved. It's my understanding, I heard that only about 20% of people in Snohomish County voted this time around.
Oh, my Snowco people vote.
I know. Oh, it's so disappointing.
So,
one way we can shape our existence.
you lose your voice if you don't vote.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And so, to be involved is to make a change, and if you're not satisfied with the way things are and you don't do anything about it, then you have no ability to make a change. So I'm so thrilled that you guys are doing this.
Thanks.
Well, Bothell is so on the cusp. I feel like we have, the city has been, we're quite through our redevelopment, but we have all these open lots. We're looking at density in Canyon Park and North Creek and Thrasher's Corner. I was just at a planning commission meeting last week where the planning commission voted to recommend some code changes for minimum density. And I mean, it's key. And I think too many times the people that show up to speak about these changes are against them. And there's definitely a time and place to be against change, but I think if the change is good for your city, we have to show up and be for it. You know, we were talking just last week, I think, and our big thing was like, we want BOPOP to show up. Like, we want to be known for that.
Well, you need to understand why it's good or why it's not good.
Right.
Right.
You really need to understand, not just that it's a gut instinct that I
Right.
don't want change,
And try and see what the long-term effects
what the
are.
long-term effects
If
are.
you if you dislike those, we understand you coming out. And if you like those effects, then we want to show up and say, we're here to support it.
And not every change is good. I think just
No.
being educated about when it's best for the city. I think with Canyon Park in particular, I'm 9 blocks away from the center of it. And it's important to me that it develops, that it becomes dense. You know, I went to the visioning session that the city held in May, and I was like, I want to see sort of a gradient of density where in Canyon Park, you know, it's super dense. And then as we get further away, you know, we see different kinds of housing, you know, leading up to single family homes in the suburbs. Right now it's single family homes almost right up until we start with, you know, commercial. And that's, you know, imagine if you worked in Canyon Park and you just needed something a little more affordable than a single family home on a big lot. You know, it's hard to find that.
We lack what I introduced the planning commission to this, but now it's got some legs all across the country. We lack what's called the missing middle housing, which is everything between a single family home and the large
Like
mega
gradients.
apartment blocks. Yeah, they call this the transect in planner speak, but it's the gradient we all talk about. It's small apartment buildings. You see both the big apartment buildings like Six Oaks and the Pop and the Junction and so forth, to the small apartment buildings of 10 or 20 or 30 units. And then you get to fourplexes and triplexes and duplexes and cottage courts and all kinds of housing that people love when we get to build it. And people in Bothell would just absolutely buy this stuff and rent it as fast as we could build it. And we need it desperately. But most of it is